2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to the PEG TV and Rutland Herald Mayoral Candidate Forum. My name is Rich Clark. I'm a professor of political science at Vermont State University, Castleton, and I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's forum, which is sponsored by PEG TV and the Rutland Herald. As moderator, I will be asking questions over the next 60 minutes. The questions were generated by the editors of the Rutland Herald with a little bit of input from myself, and the questions have not been shared with the candidates. Additionally, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask a question of his opponent at some point during this forum. For each question, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond, and then an additional 30 seconds for rebuttals after the responses. Our candidates tonight are Rutland City Mayor Mike Dunges and Alderman Henry Heck. Following a coin toss before the event, Mayor Dunges will give his opening remarks first.
Great. Thank you very much, Rich. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, PEG TV, and thank you to the Rutland Herald for having us tonight.
2 minutes.
There we go. We're waiting on the timer. Thank you. So I want to start by saying we've got momentum in Rutland. 2 years ago, I was elected to mayor, and one of the things that is a constant conversation at this time is the momentum and the pace that we have going in the city. And it's the right pace. It's the Rutland-sized pace. We're doing things that are benefiting our community every day, and we're working towards that success that we've talked about for the last 2 years. There are 3 things that I'm really hearing from the voters this year as I talk to them. The first one is public safety. What are the areas of public safety that we can continue to work on? What are the things that we've done? And what are the successes we've had, and how can we continue to grow on that? We've worked on legislation in Montpelier. We've put forward a couple of different options on bills. One of the bills that passed last year was a retail theft bill that made Rutland safer and gave our officers the tools to actually focus on capturing criminals when they commit crimes and holding them accountable in real time. Some of the other things that we've done is we've supported our PD through budget increases. We focused on their compensation package and looked at recruitment and retention as key components of what we're doing in our police force. To that point, though, affordability is big on people's minds. And we've had to find creative ways to make Rutland affordable both in the short term and for the long term. You'll hear a lot about that tonight, I'm sure. But some of the things that we've talked about is the capital improvement plan, using the 1% option tax to invest in roads and streets, and building our infrastructure without burdening the taxpayer. And lastly, growth. Growth helps with that long-term affordability, and we need to continue to focus on that in Rutland as we look at a population of 15 to 16,000 running a city of 30,000 that is built for 30,000 and that is focused on that cost of 30,000. And we have to bring those costs down by bringing more people here to our community.
Excellent, thank you. And 2 minutes to Alderman Heck.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for moderating today. Thank you, Mike, for this opportunity. So I'm just going to read a little bit of a prepared statement just to know. A lot of people may not know who I am. A little bit about me, even though I've been here my whole life. Who is Henry Heck, and why do I want to be your next mayor? Born and raised right here in Rutland. I attended local schools, graduated from Rutland Senior High School, went to Castleton State College back then in the day. I've been married to my wife, Kim, for 37 years. We have 2 children, Laura and Corey, and my wife and I just recently became grandparents, which we're very excited over. I've spent 40 years of my life developing and managing people, owned several businesses, and understand the commitment needed to succeed and also fail. People are asking about my positions when I become mayor. As I've been talking and meeting new and old friends, I hear the same concerns. People feel they're not being heard. Yes, taxation, crime, homelessness, those are all things, but the people I've been talking to are just feeling the administration's just not listening to what is going on. Being mayor will never be about me. It will be about my commitment to bring the best of all of us to this city. I have no set objectives and will never present initiatives that could harm the city, especially in the long term. I believe my qualifications are vast. I understand how this city truly operates. I have dedicated almost 18 years to Rutland City as alderman and city clerk, 2 of my greatest pleasures. As city clerk, citizens and voters understood I had their best interest and their trust. I will bring that same accountability and integrity to the mayor's office. I will also listen with compassion and respect. I will be there to help guide our men and women in uniform, making sure they have the proper tools to get the job done. I will work with city and community partners to bring our homeless population back to pre-COVID numbers. I will look at the administration's proposed data for the road diet and determine its impact.
I'm going to cut you off here. We'll move on to the first question.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a way with this here, when we're talking about a 2-minute time limit here, you have a running clock that's running down, you don't have a 2-minute clock, so you know where you're actually at in the process. That would just be helpful as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. And congratulations on the grandchild. First question will go to you. We've been told that the city needs to spend $1 million per year on roads just to keep them from getting worse than they are. Across the city, we see deferred maintenance on properties, and there appears to be a conflict between the need to make necessary repairs and the desire to keep taxes from increasing. What is your plan to maintain city infrastructure and resources? And you'll have 2 minutes.
So maintaining of the infrastructure, as pointed out quite a while ago, there's $100 million of aging pipes down underneath. That's something that we can't tackle all at one time. Looking at that, the $1 million infrastructure project going to the streets, I don't believe is enough. We will need to look at continuing the process. DPW has been tremendous at utilizing the money that they've been getting to make sure that the streets, sidewalks, curbing are looking like that, going into neighborhoods where it's really making an impact and stuff. So going to have to look at the hard answers. You know, what do we have out there for available income in regards? I think at the end of the day, when we get into the reappraisal, I think that it's going to open some avenues for us, maybe to look at things and to see about better funding opportunities as far as that goes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
You know, when we think about our infrastructure, and I think, Rich, you highlighted it really well, it is aging. The cost of replacing the things that we need to replace is getting exponentially higher the longer we wait to do it. We have to be really careful about what we choose to do and when. So we've been working with the engineering team at City Hall to carefully think about what projects need to be done in what order, how we can get multiple things done at one time. So if we're going to open up a road and repave, can we do the plumbing underneath, or vice versa? And being really strategic about that. And the way we do the funding component of that, without creating a new burden on the taxpayer, is to leverage the resources that we've put in place just in the last 2 years. So what the Board of Aldermen passed that works directly with what the voters passed 2 years ago is the Capital Improvement Program. And in that program, we've actually assigned $500,000 of the 1% option tax, that's non-property taxpayer revenue, to invest in the renovation of roads and sidewalks that need major overhaul. That's the first time in Rutland's history, without a bond or without going to the general fund, that we've been able to assign that kind of funds to roadway projects. We also this year, just in this year's budget, with one-time remaining funds from 1% revenue that didn't get assigned, have the ability to put forward the use of another $400,000 towards roads and sidewalks. There's other creative things that we're doing too with the tax increment finance district. When you see this hotel coming downtown, we're going to be able to leverage the tax revenue that they generate to work on the roads and pipes around that hotel as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Alderman Heck, you'll have 30 seconds for any rebuttal if you want to respond to anything there.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, time will be right down there. Okay, terrific then. Move to Mayor Dunges. Do you support the plan to move the Rutland Library from its current location on Court Street to the Asa Bloomer building? If so, please weigh in on whether or not City Hall and Police Department should also be moved, and what must be done with the building on Court Street. And if not, what do you see as the future for the current buildings, particularly the library building?
Sure, it's a great question. As we've been working through the process of, we have these two other components of aging infrastructure, which is City Hall and the library. There's been a conversation around the potential of moving it to the Asa Bloomer building. One of the things I have heard from the voters since I have been in office for the past 2 years is that they do not feel involved early enough in these processes for what is happening. We are so early in the process. To know whether this is a good idea or not would be, to even say that would be, it's just too early. So the meetings that we've been having is to get the feedback from people. And we have heard feedback on both sides. One, Rutland does deserve a 21st century library. There is no question people want to see that. But where that goes and how we do it is so critical for this community, that we do it in the way that the voters want to see. And we're going to give them the opportunity to have that conversation. Even tonight, while we're having this forum right now, the library is holding another meeting to hear more about that option. And the board of the library is having conversations about other options beside the Asa Bloomer building. So do I think it should go there? I think we need to look at the option. The options the library has put forth in their current place start at $10 million and go up to 20. The potential of moving starts at $5 million. So there's a potential savings there. But we need to look at what the real options are that are on the table and then move from there. And then City Hall and the police department, if it's something that we can do together, great, there could absolutely be a cost savings, but we have to evaluate all options. Do we stay in place, and what's the cost of the taxpayer there? Or do we relocate, and what's the cost of the taxpayer there? And we have to make intelligent decisions around those questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Alderman Heck, same question to you.
Thank you. I've actually come out and stated that I would never be in support of the library moving to the Asa Bloomer building. I have no problem if the library, wants to move. It's the Asa Bloomer building specifically. It's the parking garage that would probably be associated to be taken over as well. Two prior administrations have looked into the parking deck. It's really is a no-win opportunity for the city. It's not cost effective. There's issues within the dynamics of the parking garage as well, same as Asa Bloomer building. I heard, with local house reps, sat on committees that the remediation for the Asa Bloomer building could be in the amount of $30 million. The roof is needing to be done. There's issues within the basement. Literally, back in the flooding stages, the river ran through the bottom of that building. Don't know if there's remediation, mold, black mold, any of those kind of things. So I can never support the city purchasing that building just because of the fact that the parking garage would need to go with it. I've spoken with a bunch of people in regards about the dynamics about staying at the present location or moving. A 38-year veteran who had worked there said the library is a place that they could continue to function in. A lot of people don't want it to move. It has a lot of historic value there. City Hall I worked in for 14 years. Are there some issues with that? Of course. All buildings are issues, but there's also a lot of infrastructure issues going on within the city that are needing attention as well too. So, we need to do our diligence, figure out what needs to be the priorities, and go from there. But I would never support the purchasing or the moving into the Asa Bloomer building.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll give 30 seconds if you want to.
Sure, yeah. I think Alderman Heck's comments about the Asa Bloomer building and the concerns he has are exactly the concerns that have been brought forward so far. And we've been very careful to communicate with the state and with the library and City Hall employees and the public that in order to move forward with something like that, whether it's an Asa Bloomer building or any other building that we would look to use as a city asset, there's three things we need to consider: the current state, the cost of repairs, and the long-term maintenance. And when you look at that last one, the long-term maintenance, that's where the city has fallen short for many, many years, and that's why the buildings are in the state that they're in today.
Great, thank you. Alderman Heck, would you like any response to that?
The first meeting that I went to, the public forum out there and stuff, Randall Spathers came right out and said, when we move. So I think there's been more discussion about what's going on. I think some plans, may have been laid out for that so-called discussion until I maybe had brought out the fact that the Asa Bloomer building was not a good option for the city. Mayor Dunges can say what he wants in that aspect, but his plans were to go there when it started out.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to start with you, Alderman Heck. Nothing gets people more worked up than traffic and the roads. The so-called road diet on 4 and 7 has been the subject of just a lot of discussion among Rutland residents. Now that we've got about 6 months in to it, what is your assessment? Success or failure, and why?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I live up in that neighborhood. I know Mike did as well. I don't know what's going on the last couple days, but those snake trails of cars and lines have just gotten incredible. Pulling out of Hillside, pulling off into there for whatever reason, the traffic just seems abnormally heavy. And again, I've been there 25 years in that neighborhood. A lot of debate. A lot of people are not happy in regards to the road diet. They felt in the first place that it wasn't a good idea. I understand the dynamics of why it happened in regards to slowing down traffic. I thought that, in regards to police surveillance, understand shorthandedness and stuff, and COVID really changed some of the dynamics in regards to what was important, what was not. There's still issues within the road diet I'm very concerned about. I got squeezed off today. It was in the right-hand lane. You would naturally think that you would segue in, and the guy in the left-hand lane just wasn't having it. He wanted to force me right off the road. Temple Street, I have concern in regards to the community center, especially with the folks going up there for lunch or some of the community service for our elderly people. And then on North Main Street, the big issue for me is, when you're at the intersection and you're driving, it looks like 2 lanes, and then all of a sudden you have to turn at Kendall Avenue. So there's still some things out there that are just not efficient as far as that goes. Need to look at the data, as I stated, that we could continue to do so. At this point in time, I can't say that it's definitely not working perfectly, and what needs to be done will have to be looked at as far as that goes.
Great. Thank you so much. And 2 minutes, same question to you.
Great. So the road diet, road reconfiguration, the work that was put in by the state this summer for both Woodstock Ave and North Main Street, you know, I do agree with Alderman Heck. There's at least one or two issues that the state's going to be coming back in the fall, in the spring, I apologize, and repairing. And one of those is the Kendall Ave merge, as everybody's been calling it. And that was a change in the way they did that. But aside from repairing those few issues, the feedback I've been getting from people who were detractors, who did not want to see that road diet take place, has been quite positive. Now, I understand that the goals of the city in what we were trying to do, which was slow down traffic and reduce accidents, and the perception that people had, which is the time that it takes to get somewhere, they may never match, right? We wanted to reduce accidents. Now, in the 3 or 4 month period that it's been operating, we've seen a 30% accident reduction. Now, that's a short period of time. I think that we need to continue to evaluate the success of this over a longer period of time, but that's significant. To see that amount of reduction in that short a period of time is phenomenal. And those were the goals, right? We talk about the speed on Woodstock Ave, constant complaints to the police department over time about how fast people would go. And now traveling that route, including the feedback I've gotten from others, is more comfortable and people feel safer. And that was the mission of the road diet, to make people feel safer on those roads in Rutland.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll give you 30 seconds if you have a rebuttal, Alderman Heck.
Thank you. So, you know, in regards, I think the biggest unrest with people were the process and how it happened. There was some unrest, I think, with folks on Woodstock Avenue specifically, felt they weren't being heard. They weren't allowed to being heard, how the decisions were made, the processes of how that came about. So there was just frustration of trying to have a set dialogue, and they felt that they weren't allowed that opportunity to make their point and to have people understand, you know, why they were upset with what was going on. Again, it boils down to the fact that in part of the campaign here is people just haven't been heard.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. Now at this point, I just want to invite Mayor Dunges to, you can ask a question of Alderman Heck.
All right, 1 second. I have a couple options here, but you already asked some of them.
Okay.
So with good, Alderman Heck, with the announced departure of Walmart from the downtown shopping plaza, and knowing the impact of this departure, the impact that this departure will have on our city, what role do you think the city of Rutland should take in the next few years to address this departure?
Could you repeat it one more time?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, you know I have hard hearing.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
With the announced departure of Walmart from the downtown shopping plaza, and knowing the impact this departure will have on our city, what role do you think the city of Rutland should take in the next few years to address this departure?
I think they should take, the first step of really trying to figure out, working with Brixmor, see what options we're going to have about what is coming in. It's a big space. It's also one of those things that maybe we can utilize that for some different things that are going on. Maybe a retail store can move in there, as well as maybe a move for a municipal center, library, city hall type things. So I think that there's going to be all sorts of options out there, but working with the local developer to see what it is. I think the number one priority is going to be, how is it going to affect the 1% local option? You know, the departure of Walmart, without question, is going to affect that fund significantly. And as we're out there already spending, you know, a lot of that 1% local option tax, we may not know what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years. So I think that the city has to take the priority of making sure that a retail venue goes in there so we can, again, start to collect 1% local option tax to recover what we'll be losing for Walmart, and to work with whatever entities that are out there. I know there's stabilization projects that are out there. There's other infrastructure things that are being offered to developers within that dynamics. That's something that if we need to look at, we can look at those things. But getting a good partner that would want to work within the dynamics of our downtown would be the most important thing as far as
Thank you. Excellent. I want to just move on and come to the question of homelessness. Perennial problem statewide, locally. What can the city do to better meet the needs of the unhoused population?
Thanks for the question, Rich. There's a challenge with the resources that we have available in Rutland City even today. After 5 years of dealing with an increased unhoused population in Rutland City, the resources are still tapped and strapped, is a good way to say it. We have been working with the state to find ways to create what I call transitional housing and a transitional housing campus. And this is a plan we put into place several months after I was elected to office. And we have been working with them for almost 2 years now to find a way to service a population of unhoused people in Rutland that is appropriate for Rutland too. And I think it's really important to think about that. Rutland took on a lot of Vermont's homeless population through the fact that our hotel owners at the time were willing to accept vouchers. And the state has actually taken steps to help people get back to their communities, to where they're from, and the population in Rutland has decreased, but it is still at a larger number than it's ever been prior to COVID. So what we're doing is finding the resources, bringing them to Rutland, putting in place a plan of fully supportive housing and getting that put in place. And I think what you'll see is the state is very supportive when it comes to that long-term sheltering opportunity, especially for families and elderly disabled. Because with this larger population, we have to think about who do we need to, give supports to first, because it's such a large, diverse group at the moment.
Great. Thank you. I'll put the same question to you, Alderman Heck.
Could you repeat it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So what can the city do to better meet the needs of its unhoused population?
So it is one of those things, the city in itself should work with its community partners out there. I had stated I would like to see the pre-COVID numbers of homelessness come back. I think in regards to the medical field, mental health field, public safety field, as far as that goes, the numbers I have been told were between 85 and 105 pre-COVID. I think that the city can deal with that number, whole-handedly as far as that goes. But when the numbers increase to 700 or 800, we're seeing what the effect of that really was. So I understand that there's some plans. I don't know. I've heard about the Loretta home potentially being utilized to look at specific entities. I think the state of Vermont, which is, within its statutes, is I'm trying to think of the term, but when you come here, they will guarantee that you will be housed. They will take care of you in that capacity, which is great. But at the same time, we just can't take everybody in. And we saw the effect of what happened here in Rutland County, with the homeless people defecating in people's yards, urinating, sleeping in hallways and stuff like that. And the voucher program just did not work. Again, the understanding is right now the state's changing its dynamics. It's working towards more of a family type of situation where they're going to house parents and their children, or single parent and their children, and the elderly. So they saw that, what they were trying to do, it wasn't cost effective, and it wasn't working for Rutland County specifically. And so, I look forward to seeing what the state is going to produce. And as a partner, the city of Rutland would do whatever it could to help in that process, as long as the numbers were at a at a rate here that we could accommodate and make sure we're getting the resources for.
Terrific. And I got to commend you both for staying so close to your times. I appreciate it. You get 30 seconds if you have a rebuttal.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I want to talk about what we're doing right now and the success that we've had in the past 6 months alone. So I have a team that has been working directly with the state to bring those funds and resources here now. We've actually added an additional, I know it seems like a small number with a large population, but an additional 8 family housing units where people actually have full-on apartments where their families can be housed now to address that situation. And we're looking at working with other shelters as well. Companions in Wholeness was actually granted dollars from the state from a day sheltering standpoint, and then we've got amazing partners that we're working with in the space and time that we have. Yeah.
Great, thank you. 30 seconds.
You know, I think it's also important, too, that the city as an entity works with its outlying partners. You know, a lot of the issues that were presented to us did actually happen within the city. They were outside. So Rutland Town had a complex that had the ability to house upwards of 150. We just want to make sure that, that's not going to happen again. And the conditions that were down there, you know, if I was in the governor or the state and realized what kind of conditions were happening in that place, it was not good. So we want to make sure that we're capable of handling the people that we have to give them the proper living environment that they need.
Great, thank you. I'm going to stay with you, Alderman Heck. Invite you at this time if you have a question to pose to Mayor Dunges.
I didn't know we were going to do question and answer, so I don't have a question. Actually, I do have a question for you, Mike. Back at a meeting, JCI was a project that we were utilizing solar panels and those kind of things, infrastructure for the city. Seemed to catch a lot of people by surprise at the meeting and stuff. Wasn't an inexpensive project. You had the board's ability to go ahead and move forward with that project. And then I believe a grant wasn't granted. And so JCI has kind of gone away. The financing, I believe, has been halted. I'm just trying to figure out if that project is ever going to come back or what's going to happen.
Sure. Great question. So the project Alderman Heck is talking about is a project that the Board of Aldermen actually asked the city to look into from both an energy efficiency and a cost savings standpoint. We looked into the project. We found a vendor. Johnson Controls came in. They gave a presentation. They were selected to move forward to the next step after that presentation, which was to basically figure out how they were going to implement those changes in the city. The project came out that there was some cost savings for the city, not as much as we hoped. The board, as Alderman Heck said, voted to support that. And moving forward with the project, we started doing the analysis. We found very quickly that we did not get a grant. We asked to halt that intentionally, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to go ahead and do these projects if they aren't going to pay back. So working with the teams internal to City Hall, we looked at all of the projects that were on the table. We said, which ones can we cull at this point to keep this project under the line so that the taxpayers don't see an increase at all due to that. JCI is actually finalizing those call changes, and they'll be presenting to us. I believe we have a finance meeting scheduled in the next couple of weeks to review those changes and then resume financing with those new called projects, because we don't want this to actually have any burden on the taxpayer at all. If we're going to move forward, it has to be a cost savings.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, next question, we'll start with you, Alderman Heck. Crime appears to be growing a growing issue in Rutland in years, from shootings, auto break-ins, retail theft. What should be done to make Rutland residents feel safe and secure?
Well, I think the number one question is, our law enforcement are working diligently to make sure that these things don't happen. I know there's been some things about posting trespassing notices and those kind of things to make it more effective for law enforcement to be able to do those things. But I think the number one priority right now is the bail reform statute that's been passed out there. The legislature is the one who determines how it's going to be set, when it can be set, what you can do and how you can do. It was part of my plan and my campaign too, is to work with our House representatives and our senators to really compel them to do something about this bail reform. It's not working out. There's statistics out there that are showing that this has actually increased criminal activity and stuff. So I don't know why legislators think they know more than the law enforcement, the judges, and all those kind of people, why they need to enact things in regards. If you commit a crime, there's a punishment for that. And we should be able to give our folks the tools necessary to do the jobs as it is, because it's not working. And I don't know, again, where I heard a statistic, but the 5 biggest problems, they're saying in the state of Vermont, 50 people are creating all this havoc. In the city of Rutland, there's 5. When those 5 people were incarcerated at the same time, the crime rate for those petty crimes dropped like 90%. So if there's those individuals, if they're the troublemakers out there that are really creating this, let's work on something that's going to say, okay, if you get caught doing this, 2 times or 3 times, then we're going to have to change procedures about how we're looking at bail reform. But when they're being arrested, get out, go back, shoplift again, being arrested, get out, go back. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that we're allowing these kind of things to happen. And I think that's where it really needs to start is with legislation and enacting tougher penalties.
Great, thank you. Mayor Dunn, just same question to you.
Absolutely. I think the first part is we need to continue to keep the teams that focus on public safety well-staffed and in the right place. So our police department and the resources around them need to be in the right place so that we can take action when the time comes. But we also need to give them the right tools to do their job. And that really does come through legislation. We don't have the ability in Rutland City to make laws that can affect these larger crimes. We can adjust minor things. So what we have to do is we have to spend time in Montpelier lobbying for legislation that really puts responsibility and accountability on the people creating those bad actions. We've done that once already, right? I was able to lobby in Montpelier for the retail theft bill. This is the bill that consolidates multiple retail thefts into one. And that is actually where a lot of these people are being held accountable and actually being held with responsibilities that don't allow them to get back out on the street and commit that crime again. The second piece of legislation that's up in Montpelier right now that is directly related to drug sales, and this is a big deal in Rutland, is there's a gun theft bill. Right now, if you steal a weapon, it's valued under $900. That's a misdemeanor, and that's not okay. And this is a bill that's being supported by both sides because anybody who's a responsible gun owner doesn't want that to go unchecked. So I believe that what you'll find is the legislation that we support is going to give the state's attorney more teeth to actually put some real pressure on the criminals creating those crimes. I think the other thing that we've put forward, and I've talked to all of our legislators about this, is minimums, sentencing minimums. The judges don't have good minimum guidelines on xylazine, fentanyl, and heroin. So we put out a bill for sentencing minimums on those 3 drugs that will give the judges minimum guidelines to hold people accountable for a longer period of time. And that goes far beyond bail while they're waiting for their trial.
Great, thank you. Give you 30 seconds if you'd like to.
It was interesting. I've been, branching out here. I've been able to see John Rogers, our new Lieutenant Governor, speak on some things, and he actually used the term cartel. With the drugs that are coming in and stuff, and said the cartel, is an entity that's using 16-year-old kids or teenagers to do this under 18, where they can't be prosecuted. What happens is the state of Vermont says, well, guess what? You're underage. You don't have to worry about it. We'll take the drugs. So again, it's one of those things. We need to get better tools for our people, law enforcement, and the DA type people and stuff.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Yeah, what we've seen, what we put into place over the past 2 years, and then the direction we're continuing to head, which is new legislation, asking the governor for an additional judge appointed to Rutland to deal with our case backlog, those we've seen the impact. Another piece of the puzzle is really looking at the crime data, and what we see in Rutland is substance use is directly correlated to our high crime numbers, and we have to address that as well. So when we're talking with our legislators, we're also asking for a correlated substance use program or leveraging what's called recovery court to be able to get people through a program that gets them stable so they don't have to commit those crimes anymore. And that's it's a great piece of work that's been done in Rutland City, and we see the success when that happens, and we're going to want to continue with that.
Great. I'm going to stay with you, Mayor Dunges. Economic development. It's a struggle in Vermont, it's a struggle in Rutland. What can or should Rutland Mayor do to create conditions for greater investment and community to spur jobs and growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you look at a municipality and its role in economic development, it's really supposed to be focused on market failure. If the market is doing well, the private sector will hold that area up. So the role of government is to really say, hey, where's the boat being missed at the moment, and how do we help? And there's two areas in Rutland that I think really stand out. One is housing, and two is unfilled jobs. When we used to have the jobs conversation back in the 90s and the 2000s, it was, we have too many people and not enough jobs. Now we have too many jobs and not enough people. So that housing piece is really important. And we look at housing and growing housing in Rutland, and we've been able to bring $8 million specifically to Rutland City through Roofs Over Rutland in conjunction with the state treasurer and with Heritage Family Credit Union. Those low interest loans, $6.5 million of that was already applied for. That's $6.5 million that'll be in our community, feeding construction jobs, feeding into new residences, and allowing people to move to the city to fill those other positions. So those things tie tightly together. Those same people that'll be here in our community, whether they're building the houses or living in them when they're done, those same people will be shopping in our stores, they'll be eating in our restaurants. So economic development across the country, not just in Vermont, but across the country right now, is so based in that housing and filling those job components. Those two things are so tightly tied together. But we can't forget the public safety components, right? We have to keep that there, and we can't forget the affordability components as well, because we want people to move to the community, so we need it to remain affordable. It all ties back together. And when we look at how we grow economic development in Rutland, we need to get a bigger base of individuals and families living in our community, feeding back into it so that that load is lightened for everyone.
Great. Thank you. I'll put the same question to you.
If you repeat it for me,
I'd be happy to. Love to. What can or should the Rutland Mayor do to create conditions for greater investment in the community and to spur jobs and growth?
You know, it's a great question. Some people may say, is it really the mayor's job to be a developer, a private developer? You know, the city at some point with blighted property, we were taking over. We didn't want to be landlords. Those are the things that we didn't want to do. But I think that we need to work with the partners that are out there. It's been very interesting. I've met some very young entrepreneurial type people that worked under the Giancola, construction company and stuff. And these are individuals that now have 18 apartment complexes. They go through them, they work them, they develop them. So we can look at these things from as a big, grandiose type of thing, millions of dollars of companies coming in and stuff. But I really like to look at the small entrepreneur that's out there it's really making an impact. The housing market, the housing stock is out there. A lot of people say within Rutland County there could be 1,000 units that are just looking to be redeveloped and rehashed. I know a lot of people that are in the development stage, and they're saying it's just not economically feasible to build the developments that we used to have. So, I look at it from the sense, we hear about the hospital. They have a lot of jobs that are open. They can't get people here because there's no housing for them, or they come here and the housing is too expensive. COVID changed the dynamics of Vermont considerably. Once people found out they could work from home, you could go to the Green Mountains, you could hike, go out and do your jobs, and they had the money and the resources. Now all of a sudden, your $150,000 home is now selling for $300,000 or $350,000. So it's more complex than it may seem because we don't have a lot of high-paying jobs here. There's a study out that says the average home is $300,000. 15% of the people within the state of Vermont can afford a $300,000 home and maintain it.
Thank you. Give you 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I think, I set a goal last year of 1,000 new units over a 5-year period to actually make Rutland more affordable from a housing standpoint. The more units we can have on the market, the more we can see those landlords not have to raise their rent to fill their places, right? It's a market norm that supply and demand is what we're seeing, and the demand is there and the supply is not. So we have to have a surplus. We have to carefully invest in what we're doing. of that $6.5 million applied for, most of it was on the $5 million side that really focused on those small developers, and they're the ones that are being successful in this community, and they're doing a great job. So as we see 2, 4, 6 units coming online, those are going to be the bread and butter of success in housing growth and economic development in Rutland, for sure.
Would you like a rebuttal?
You know,
30
Mike,
seconds.
it's one of those things that people talk about taxes. And if we don't do something to control the tax base, we're not going to have to worry about housing stock, because a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford to live here anymore. And those things will become available. The other dynamic that's changed the complexity here is Airbnb. All of a sudden, people just want Airbnb because it's so much easier to deal with a person for a week than it is for an entire month. I think the city needs to look at, I believe at some point they are looking at that housing stock, how many Airbnbs here. We may have to limit those numbers because it's taking away from stock that's out there for people that may want an apartment. There's lots of things that we can look at, but there will need to be some decisions that are going to need to be made, for sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. I'll give you 2 minutes on this. Where to you? The climate change means that flooding will be a persistent challenge in Rutland and surrounding areas. Is the city doing all it can to be proactive in preparation for flooding events? If so, what can you tell the residents is being done? And if not, what should the city be doing?
You know, it's a great question. One of the things that I always loved about City Hall is upstairs, as you went to DPW, they had these maps out there, and they talk about events, 100-year events, 500-year events, the flooding and how it happened. You hear about, you know, back in the old days, you know, the Great Flood and, you know, what happened there. But since Irene and, you know, other, environmental anomalies out there, flooding has become, you know, more of an issue. I don't know how we're going to resolve that. I think within the city, it's pretty good. We're fortunate that the local public safety people, the fire department specifically, you know, has worked towards, you know, utilizing and do what they ever need, the swift water response teams that they have out there and those kind of things. And I hate even talking about this, but the one benefit supposedly from this, flooding is rivers. And right now we have I believe it's a chloramine issue within the city in regards to looking at what's going on within the water itself. Whenever we have an event like that, it seems to scrub all that stuff that's out of there and washes it away, and then all of a sudden those levels come back down. So the state's happy in that capacity, and we definitely don't want flooding to take care of that. And there's things that we'll be doing out there, but working with people that know a little bit more about this. But I think the city has some of these things well in hand. Some of the sewer separation projects are making it better for things to flow out of the city and stuff. I think we'll continue to look at those things and make those repairs, but do what we have to do as those environmental changes come about.
Thank you very much. And I'll put the same question to you, Mayor Dunn.
Can you repeat? Would you mind repeating it again?
I'd be happy to.
Thank
So is the city doing all it can to be proactive in preparation for flooding events? If so, what can you tell residents is being done? And if not, what should the city be doing?
Sure. Thank you for repeating that. So in my first term, in my first few months as mayor, we saw major floods twice in the same summer in Rutland. And I not only had residents calling my office concerned because they couldn't get back into their homes, but friends and family as well in similar situations. And a lot of the flooding issues in Rutland, there's two sides. There's the long-term, what we have to fix, and then there's the short-term, how do we respond? How we respond is phenomenal. Our police and fire departments are always ready to go. DPW has sandbags. I went out with DPW, I think during that first flood, we were knocking on doors on Door Drive to let people know that the waters were continuing to rise and we needed to get them out of their homes and into a safe space. And luckily, everybody was okay. We had no issues with human lives lost, nothing like that in our first flood. However, there was a lot of loss of property and a lot of property damage, especially on Clover Street, where we saw people really just suffering from the fact that their homes weren't livable for an extended period of time. So when we look at that, we say, okay, what's the long-term solve? The culverts in Rutland are extremely small. There are areas under bridges, both on Main Street and on Strongs Avenue, where the culverts are so undersized that the water can't flow through on the brook. We've been trying to replace these culverts, but we've been using city money and bonds to do it for a long time. That's also a burden on the taxpayer. Well, there's a fund in Vermont, and there's funds federally to actually replace these culverts in advance. And under my administration, we've actually started on something called the long-term control plan. It's actually the flood hazard mitigation plan in conjunction with the long-term control plan to actually look at those culverts, say what needs to be replaced. That gives us access to that federal funding. We could have applied for this 20 years ago and we didn't, and now we're moving forward with that flood hazard mitigation plan, and I'm really excited. Everybody's on board, fire, police, DPW, rec, everyone's pitching in to work on this plan so that soon we can access those funds, and right now we've got applications in to do some remediation in those areas so that we can fix this before the next time the city gets flooded.
Great. Thanks very much. You 30 seconds if you'd like to
That's
respond to
great.
anything.
That's great news, because those folks down on Clover, when that happens, it's unbelievable how high the water gets and how fast it happens. I believe at one point in time, I know there's been a couple homes that have been purchased down there and then taken down. I don't know if at some point the rest of that neighborhood, or at least on the south side, whatever buildings are there may be removed. But again, if we can kind of fix the situation with the culverts and stuff, that's the number one thing as far as that goes. But continue to do what we've been doing, which is trying to be proactive for the people when we know we have high-risk flooding areas, is to, take care of that.
Great. Thank you.
I think the communication from people is that in those low-lying areas, they do understand the challenges that they're presented with being next to these streams. But they're also a big benefit in Rutland. If we can control that flow as much as possible with the funds that are available in the flood hazard mitigation grant program, I think what we can do is we can make those homes safe again. However, there are people that say, I just don't want to be there. And when those options come up, we can absolutely look at buyouts. And that's something that we've talked about and is in this application as well.
Yeah, okay. I think this next question, you've covered this a bit, but I'm going to ask the question anyways and see if there's more to add. Throughout Vermont, housing condition continues to be a challenge. What can the city do to increase the housing stock while keeping housing affordable and accessible to all people at all income levels?
That's a great question. We are in what I call a housing logjam. So we have every level of income looking for some place to live at any time in Rutland City. We've got apartments that people are living in right now that are affordable apartments, that those people actually are earning a little bit better income and they could move into something more market rate. We have amazing housing partners on the affordable side that know the ins and outs. The Rutland Housing Trust, the Housing Authority, NeighborWorks, Habitat for Humanity, they're all doing their job. So they're working on that. So again, what's the market failure? Where does the gap need to be filled? On the city side, what we can do is we can work to bring resources, and financial resources are better, like low interest loans to the city, and incentivize developers to come build here. The other thing we can do is lobby for changes in Montpelier to actually reduce the burden on developers. Part of the reason developers don't come to the area isn't just financial, right? The numbers are starting to pan out for them in the conversations I'm having. It's time constraints. And we did that. There's an act that was passed last year, Act 181, and it's Act 250 reform. And for Rutland, it is a massive benefit. The hotel that is going to be built in downtown is not going to need an Act 250 permit, and that has 26 apartments in it. And because of those 26 apartments and the fact that that act was put in place, we're going to be able to get them through the process much faster because of that jurisdictional opinion that was given by the state saying you don't need to do this. We enabled, in my first few weeks of administration, something that was actually the second month, something called the Neighborhood Development Area, which also falls into the same guideline that allows Rutland to be more developable for those housers to come in and build without having to deal with Act 250. And then there's something called the 3-acre rule that's really holding us up with development half acre or more, where we've put documents in front of the governor to ask his departments to work on that, to reduce the burden on those developers as they come here and the people that already own property, and that's such a big deal for our community. So really focused on both legislation and funding for our community.
Great, thank you so much. I'll put the same question to you.
Would you repeat it?
I would be happy to, sure. So what can the city do to increase the housing stock while keeping housing affordable and accessible to people at all income levels?
Well, I could say ditto. to Mayor Dungis's, which could be the safe way out. You know, when you're in the position here, you get a lot more input and resources, and you work with us on a daily basis. For the average Joe out here, you know, we don't have all the big terms and you know, understanding what dynamics are being passed and not being passed and stuff. It all boils back down to just working with, you know, our partners, whether it's the local government, it's the federal government, you know, state agencies as far as that goes, young developers that are coming out and stuff. But the only thing I'll comment on and stuff, our partners do a great job, but I just don't understand how a development where you're looking at 14 unit or 20 unit or 26 unit, and maybe not that big, but it just seemed like a little time ago, those units were $350,000, what the cost was associated with that. Now these units are closer to $600,000. I just can't fathom that it's costing $600,000 to build these things. We can take that money and utilize. There's other local developers that worked on projects and they did a 7-unit complex, I think, and it was $350,000 total. So we have to look how, you know, what we have for resources, if it's going to be good. I understand that the federal government is funneling money in. We're still, at the end of the day, taxpayers are still paying for this and stuff. So we have to look at these projects. If we're going to get the money, of course we're going to accept it and utilize it, but it doesn't cost $350,000 or $600,000 to build an apartment, you know, for each apartment, you know, that's out there. So it's a difficult, you know, difficult question, and it's one that we need to continue to work on because the affordability is a piece. And again, I call it the chicken or the egg question: which came first? We need to have great jobs where people can afford houses, or do we have the affordability of houses to make people come here and work for the jobs?
Thank you. If you forgive me, I'm going to pass on rebuttal so that we can get one more question in before your closing statements. Alderman Heck, we'll start with you here. So Rutland continues to be challenged by its demographics, an aging population without an influx of younger workers and families. What can be done to make Rutland a more attractive place to live, work, and play?
You know, number one is going to be probably crime. You know, if there's crime, people don't want to come here. I think our schools are the second thing, making sure that we have, you know, proper educators, that the schools are running as effectively as they can. It is you know, a great question, again, getting people to come here. Again, COVID changed the dynamics. We do have some people coming here. I know when I was city clerk and stuff, I think the you know, the voter checklist had grown. I went back into the 70s to find out we had almost 12,000 registered voters here. I know Mike comments and says we have a city for 30,000 and we only have 16,000, but throughout the course of the days and stuff, our city does grow. And then as nighttime comes and people leave, it you know, it falls back to you know, safer numbers. Excuse me. But to create that thing, public safety, schools are number one priority, affordability, but I still think good jobs is a number one thing. If people come and they can work out of their homes, they don't have to worry about those things. So having a job, I don't think a $60,000 income is a lot of money. That's a $30 an hour job. And we don't have a lot of $30 an hour jobs that are out there. So again, for me, we're looking at the basis of, you know, can you afford to come here? And if they can, what is then it's the housing stock. So we're going to have to work on those dynamics and do the best we can to support our public safety people, support our local educators, make that an environment. We have great resources, Killington Mountain, Georgetti Park, all those kind of things, hiking, biking, swimming. So there are a lot of great things to come here, family conducive type things to bring people here, but it's just getting into those dynamics of affordability really at the end of the day.
Great, thank you. I'll put the same question to you.
Sure. You know, I do agree that public safety and affordability are key. I think that people want to live in a safe and welcoming and affordable community, there's no question. But to ask, what do we do to attract people? What can the municipality do to bring people here? It's to continue supporting our partners that are working so hard. And those partners are everything from small business owners. We've had more small businesses open in our city in the past 2 years than we saw in the previous 4, which is phenomenal. We've had a lot of investment from our not-for-profits to host great events. Winterfest is coming up in the next week, so make sure you go and attend that. But having things to do in our community, having experiences for families here. We live in a beautiful location. Rutland is what I call a lifestyle location. You've got the mountains 20 minutes away, you've got the lakes 20 minutes away. What a great place to live if you like the outdoor lifestyle. And we want to be attractive to families. We want people to come here and grow. We actually just hired an engineer at the city. His name is Soupy. We're really excited about him starting. His partner was out here, found a job at the hospital, making good money, over $80,000 a year, and he's coming here to work for the city and fill a job there as well. But the dynamic of having that open workspace and the ability to work remotely brings the ability for 2 partners to come together, one get a geographically based job and one getting a remote based job and coming to our community. So we need to make that as accessible as possible. Attraction to Rutland is key. Keeping our city beautiful, keeping it safe, keeping it affordable. Those are key components, and we've talked about that tonight. We're working on all of those things. We've got evidence of the successes, and I think the one thing I hear that is so exciting from people all the time is, we love the direction you're headed, keep going, we see the momentum, this is awesome.
Great, thank you. So before we conclude tonight, I want to give each of our candidates 1 minute to speak to voters with some closing remarks, and we'll start with you, Alderman Heck.
Well, I'd like to thank PEG TV and the Rutland Herald for this opportunity. A forum, we used to do debates and stuff like that. I kind of call this a slow-pitch softball event here as far as that goes. Sometimes I have learned that the voters do not like negativity. That's one thing that these people have always prided themselves on. There's been a lot of things out there lately with me in the press and stuff like that, and I've had to answer to those things, which I have done unwavering as far as that goes. But there comes a point in time where, I would really like to just get back to campaigning and not have to worrying about all the allegations all of a sudden before Election Day and all the things that are being brought up. It would be nice just to get down to what really are the problems here in our city and to address those things. And I would look forward to, over the last couple weeks, addressing those. I'll be out there working diligently. I cannot commend my supporters enough, and I really appreciate everyone's input as far as that goes, and I look forward to Election Day. Get out and vote.
Thank you. Okay.
Great. We've got a lot of momentum right now. I'm really excited about the directions that we're headed. We want to maintain that momentum as we move forward. A lot of great work in the public safety space. I look forward to what's happening in Montpelier right now. It's going to give our officers and our judges the tools to be able to get things done, to hold people accountable. We have a proven track record of success in the housing space, and that's only going to grow. We're only going to build on economic development as we bring more people here, families to Rutland, to live in our homes and to work on those spaces. And some of those spaces, there's 240 locations that need revitalization. We can absolutely see those done for under the $350 a square foot. We're seeing that done for $80,000 to revitalize an entire home. So we know that we can do it affordably here in Rutland too. I think the key here in moving forward is that we have plans, we have partners, and we've got people all working in the city together, and we're hearing your voice at City Hall. We're listening, we're taking those plans, we're taking action, we're getting it done. So I hope you show up to the polls on Tuesday, March 4th and vote, and we really appreciate it if you could be there and support your community.
Great. Well, thank you. Again, I want to thank the candidates for engaging with the voters and with each other tonight. Public service at the local level is extremely important, and those who give their time rarely receive the gratitude that you all deserve. So thank you. I also want to thank and recognize, again, those who made this forum possible, PEG TV and the Rutland Herald, for sponsoring this event, and they serve our community every day. Lastly, then, I want to remind everybody that town meeting day is March 4th. Please vote and encourage your neighbors and your friends to do the same. Thank you, and be well.